Good evening. Welcome to Capture Home. I'm Mr. Albert, a dear friend of the Oliver family who live in this stately 38-room mansion. I'm delighted that you're able to be here with us this evening, even if it is for a rather unusual gathering of the police and suspects involved in the Dillinger bank robbery. You'll be hearing much more about that later, but first, the Oliver family has asked me to share a bit of information about their magnificent abode. This grand home was built by J.D. Oliver and Anna Oliver and completed in 1897. Capture Home, as the family has named their house, contains 38 rooms, including a formal dining room, an elegant library, and the main hall where I am standing. Capture Home was designed by New York architect Charles Alonzo Rich and built of local Indiana fieldstone, primarily granite. It was one of the first houses in South Bend to be wired for electricity. The music room was added soon after they moved in, with the lovely reading alcove immediately above it. But this marvelous house isn't the only building in South Bend associated with the Olivers. J.D. and his father, James, paid for the construction of the Oliver Opera House, which opened in October 1885. The Opera House holds 11 dressing rooms and 164 pieces of scenery. It has been described as one of the very finest opera houses in the United States and is situated on the corner of Main Street and Colfax Avenue in downtown South Bend. In 1888, James built the first Presbyterian church on the corner of Lafayette and Washington, also in downtown South Bend. It features arched entrances, a massive Palladian window of stained glass, and a corner bell tower. Perhaps the crowning achievement of James and J.D. is the Oliver Hotel, which occupies an entire city block on Washington between Main and Lafayette. The 6-story palace opened on December 20th, 1899, with over 4,000 invitations being sent out for the gala. I was there, of course. The hotel is more opulent than anyone could have imagined for turn-of-the-century South Bend. The first 2 floors are public, with the lobby and rotunda designed in an Italian Renaissance style, embellished in gold with allegorical figures painted to represent the 4 seasons, the fine arts, the elements, and the performing arts. The town was so impressed with the hotel and all of the philanthropic work that James Oliver and his wife Susan Catherine had provided South Bend that in June 1900 they were presented with the Oliver Loving Cup, a gold cup made by Tiffany & Company in New York. Yes, the Oliver family is certainly very important to South Bend and will be for many years to come, I'm sure. And now, I invite you to learn more about the Dillinger bank robbery. Do enjoy your visit.
Hello, I'm Anna Oliver. Welcome to Capture Home. My dear husband, J.D., passed away last year. But I still live here with Catherine and Joseph Jr., our son and daughter. Our other 2 children, Gertrude and James II, they're married and have homes of their own. But we all have fond memories of this house. Down the hall is my husband's den. He used to use it as an office when he was at home, and he would often let the children play in there while he was reading the paper or writing letters. If they got too rambunctious, he would just give them a kindly look. We were so fortunate to raise our children in this home. But now, with the Depression and the Dust Bowl and that awful John Dillinger, I'm sure you've heard that Mr. Dillinger robbed the Merchants National Bank here in South Bend in June. It was a horrible experience, with the police and the getaway car, and the bullets, and all that money. Finally, the Bureau of Investigation and Mr. Elliot Ness tracked Mr. Dillinger down. And as I understand it, he perished amidst gunfire in a theater in Chicago. The authorities have many people that they would like to question, and they need a home base. So I have offered Copsha a home for that purpose for them. I thought it was my civic duty to support the police in this endeavor. I know my husband would be proud. I hope you enjoy your time here and enjoy listening in on the investigation.
My name's Ness, Elliot Ness, and I'm an agent for the Bureau of Investigation, or BOI. In Chicago, they call us the Untouchables because we can't be bought or bribed or intimidated. We're here to break up organized crime wherever it violates a federal law, booze, drugs, or gambling. Sometimes we also get called in on robberies as well. If the criminal crosses a state line, that makes it a federal offense. And that's how we caught up with John Dillinger. The late Mr. Dillinger, I should say. He'd knocked over a string of banks from here to Timbuktu. The latest being the Merchants National, right here in South Bend on June 30th. That's on the west side of Michigan Street between Wayne and Jefferson in downtown South Bend. Got away with $30,000 too. He shows up in Chicago, and that's where we took him down. It was that madam, Anna Sage, who cracked the case for us. She told us Dillinger had been hanging out with one of her ladies, Polly Hamilton, and they led us right to him at the Biograph Theater in Lincoln Park. Polly wore a red dress so we would be sure not to miss him, and we didn't. My men shot Dillinger dead there and then. So that closes the book on a long string of robberies by the Dillinger gang. They started off in New Carlisle, Ohio in June of 1933, and then went on to rob a bank in Indianapolis. After they sprung Dillinger from the Lima prison, they robbed banks in Racine, Wisconsin, East Chicago, Indiana, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Mason City, Iowa, and Fostoria, Ohio. They also attacked Indiana State Police arsenals in Auburn and Peru, stealing machine guns, rifles, revolvers, ammunition, and bulletproof vests. The gang was a real who's who of mobsters. Babyface Nelson, Red Hamilton, Eddie Green, among others. During the robbery of the Merchants National in downtown South Bend, police officer Howard Wagner was shot and killed as the heavily armed gang exited the bank. After a brief shootout, the gang made their getaway, with police in hot pursuit. Several people remember seeing the gang's black Hudson pulling away from pursuing police as they went racing out West Washington Street. We nabbed two of his lieutenants and the driver of the getaway car. The only one who's eluded us is the front man. That's the man, or could be a woman in this case, who checks out the joint to be robbed, in this case the Merchants National. Makes a few deposits, gets a lay of the land, tells them their routine. Did a pretty good job of it too. The gang seemed to have a lot of inside information. We have reason to believe that this mysterious partner is in Copsha Home this very night. Copsha Home's a big place, and I can't be everywhere at once. So keep your eyes and ears open. Be careful. Make sure to take note of anything suspicious. Enjoy your evening, and good luck.
I've already told the police everything I know. And now this Bureau of Investigation man, this Mr. Ness, wants me to tell it all to him again. All right, here goes. I'm Nora Milburn, and I'm a teller at the bank. It was the 30th of June, late in the morning. Well, everybody knows that. It was in all the newspapers. Anyway, there were about 20 people in line at the bank. I was watching the clock and getting ready to do my daily closeout because the bank closes at noon on Saturdays. All of a sudden, there's these men in the bank, maybe 3 of them, shooting their guns into the ceiling. I guess they thought us tellers would just run away and hide and they could just help themselves to the money. The leader of the gang, now that was John Dillinger, stayed in the lobby and kept an eye on things while his men got the money. He was wearing dark glasses, a very handsome man, if I may say so. And for some reason, he put his face up very close to mine, like he wanted me to recognize him. Well, after they got the money, they all started to leave. But when they got to the door, one of the men turned around and shot his machine gun into the ceiling. Now, there was no need to do that. I think he just wanted to make a lot of noise. And now, the police are saying it wasn't John Dillinger at all. They figure that Dillinger knew the Bureau was closing in on him. So he got this pal of his, Jimmy Lawrence, I think it was, one who looked so much like him they could practically be brothers. He got him to do the job for him. And that way, Dillinger could sneak off to the west while the Bureau was scratching around here for him. That's why he didn't wear no mask. He wanted to be seen, see? And now, the Bureau of Investigation has gunned down Lawrence in Chicago, and everybody thinks they got their man. Meanwhile, out in Wyoming or California or someplace, Mr. John Dillinger is laughing his head off. You want to know what I think? I think it was John Dillinger that robbed our bank. I saw his picture in all the papers, and I knew it was him. You may fool the police, but you have to get up pretty early in the morning to fool Nora Milburn. I've worked at that bank for almost 20 years now. I'm in charge of all the other tellers. I even have access to the night depository. I've seen all kinds of things come and go, from the double eagle gold coin to the buffalo nickel. I can tell a counterfeit $20 bill just by the way the paper feels when you rub it through your fingers. Yeah, I know all the stores on that street, too. From Robertson's on the corner, to the Merchant's Bank, to Hook's Drugs. And then on the other side, you've got J.C. Penney's and that lunch counter place. Ness is pretty smart to want to talk to me. I'm going to tell him all about it.
My name is Elizabeth Fletcher Allen, and I received my law degree 2 years ago from Boston University. I hope to pass the bar soon, and when I do, they tell me I'll be the first Negro woman to practice law in the city of South Bend and even in the entire state of Indiana. My husband, J. Chester Allen, is also an attorney, and we plan to open our own law firm, Allen & Allen It Will Be. I won't engross you with the story of who will be the first Allen in that title. For the past several years, we've been active in the effort to end segregation at the Ingman Public Natatorium at 1040 West Washington Street in South Bend. Public Natatorium? Not quite, since not everyone is allowed to use the facility. On May 15, 1931, we filed the first formal complaint to end the discrimination there. Hopefully, if we continue the legal pressure, the authorities will relent and allow people like me to use the pool. We're asking for access anytime anyone else can be there, but it's possible the men in charge will put us on some kind of ridiculous schedule and tell us we can only use it when whites aren't present. Some people ask why we stay here. Here's a story from my relatives that I often read. In the South, we had lived under Jim Crow laws all our lives. Segregated schools, segregated restaurants, segregated restrooms. Southern states had effectively barred Negroes from voting, and people who couldn't vote couldn't serve on juries. They were excluded from almost every aspect of political life. We thought life in the North would be better, and to some extent it was. In the South, signs told us where we could eat, where to sit, which water fountain to use. In the North, there was still discrimination, just no signs. So I'm dedicating my life to removing those invisible signs from our lives. As for today, though, I'm particularly interested in a crime that took place in downtown South Bend the other day. The Merchant's Bank on South Michigan Street was robbed. Some say it was John Dillinger and his gang. I've heard rumors that right after it happened, a black Hudson went flying down the street that day. I mean, it was really moving. Then, just as it rounded the corner of Washington and Lafayette, they say, a woman was seen yelling at the car and waving. The driver slowed down to look, then floored it and sped away. Naturally, I reported these rumors to the police, and they said they'd look into it. At any rate, the BOI caught up with him in Chicago and shot him dead. So I guess that's one less thing to worry about. Now, if I can just convince those council members.
Charles Gadfly Tiddle Dew, at your service. The local newspaper says there's going to be a full moon on the 18th. I can never hear the word 18th without being put in mind of the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, which ushered in prohibition. Gives me the heebie-jeebies every time I think about it. Puts me in mind of the time I was traversing the Yukon. We had lost our corkscrew, and for days we were compelled to live on nothing but food and water. I've been in vaudeville a long time, and I gotta tell you, it ain't what it used to be. I used to be on the ticket with Bert Lahr, Dorothy Lamour, Laurel and Hardy, Ginger Rogers, all the big names. I could do it all. Sing, way down upon the Suwannee River. Dance. And comedy. Good evening, ladies and germs. That used to kill them. I'd have them lined up for hours just to see old Tiddle Dew. So I'm making the rounds of the old vaudeville houses one more time, from East Chicago to Sioux Falls to Mason City, Iowa. But most of the big acts have moved on or retired. First there was silent movies, and then, as if that wasn't bad enough, along come talkies. But radio, that was the real death knell. Who'd pay to listen to the likes of me when they could turn on their tube and hear Jack Benny or Abbott and Costello for free? So I'm taking on some side work, some odd jobs, just to try and make ends meet. And then about 2 weeks ago, right here in South Bend, this young lady comes to my dressing room right after the show. Says she's trying to get into show business, says she's a musician looking to make her big break. Well, aren't we all? Then she gave me a sob story about having to sell her guitar. Can't you please help me, Tiddle? She always used to call me Tiddle. She had the most beautiful eyes, just like a cat. And she started coming to my dressing room night after night, and people were starting to talk. So I tried to get her to come up to my hotel room instead. No dice. Instead of Tiddle Dew, you'd have thought my name was Tiddle Don't. Anyway, we started meeting at a place near here late at night. And then she just disappeared. And yesterday, out of the blue, Elliot Ness says he wants to see me. Mr. Top Cop himself. So I meet him here and he starts asking me all these questions. Why are you always moving around from town to town? Well, that's vaudeville. And then he's asking me questions about Johnny Dillinger and Merchant National and bank robberies. What do I know from robbers? I'm in vaudeville. I used to be on the ticket with some of the biggest names like Al Jolson, Eddie Cantor, Jimmy Durante, Milton Berle. Vaudeville's pretty much dead, isn't it, he asks. Sure is, I answer him. That's why I'm getting ready to head out to California in the big screen. The next time you see the name Tiddle Dew, it'll be a star of a Hollywood film. But I was sure hoping to take Cat Eyes with me.
My name is Daisy May. I come out of Colby, Kansas 7, maybe 8 months ago. After Mama died, my Aunt Eunice sent me the bus fare to come out here. I packed myself a lunch and Daddy put a crumpled dollar bill in my hand when the time came. You be a good girl, he told me, and I got on the bus and rolled away. It's been hard for him. No rain, no crops, no livestock to talk about, just one less mouth to feed. I got a letter from him maybe a month back from California. He hitchhiked out to a place called Bakersfield, picking oranges and grapes. Aunt Eunice found me this job here with Mr. and Mrs. Oliver cleaning house, and I like it just fine. 3 meals a day, clean sheets, and half day off every Sunday morning. They say there's a piece of water around here so big you can't see the other side of it. More water than I've ever seen in my life. Of course, they might just be funning with me about that, but we'll see. That'd be something. It sure is tough back there, I can tell you that. Every day the sky was just black with dust. It was darkness at noon, just like the Bible says. I'd go out to look at the cows, and they was too weak even to stand up. They just looked at me with their sad brown eyes and wondered why I couldn't bring them no food or water or nothing. One day, I saw a crow's nest. Now, they make their nests out of grass or straw or just anything they can find. But now there was nothing growing for them to use. So it made its nest out of barbed wire. A whole crow's nest made of nothing but barbed wire. I ain't never seen nothing like it. Now, I'll tell you something I ain't told nobody. A couple nights ago, it was a warm evening, so I opened my window a crack to let some air in. And pretty soon, I heard some voices coming up out of the side yard, or maybe it was the carriage house. It was real dark, so I couldn't exactly tell. Anyways, one of them says, "Do you have it?" And the other says, "Back at my place." Well, I shut the window real quick, I can tell you that, and locked it too. Then it sounded like, "Hey diddle diddle, the cat and the fiddle," you know, like the nursery rhyme. I didn't know what to make of it, so I just kept it to myself. I like it here just fine, and I would beg, borrow, or steal to stay here, I can tell you that. There's some real nice-looking men up the road a ways. I met one of them at the bank the other day, just before it was robbed. I can take care of myself, and the Olivers are real nice to me. I don't mind the work. I get to sleep right here in this room, and I eat 3 meals a day. Well, I don't care if there are gangsters around here, and I don't care if there's a big lake you can't see across or not. I miss Mama, and I miss Daddy, but I ain't never going back.
I ought to be in pictures. I'm wonderful to see. Claude? Claude?
Hey, knock off that caterwauling.
Claude, there's a man here wants to talk to ya.
That's all I need. I fixed Dillinger's car, and then it broke down. The cops think I was in on the heist, so they're after me. And Dillinger's gang? Well, they think I sabotaged the getaway car, so they're after me. The cops catch me first, I'll be in jail for life. The gang catches me first, I'll be dead for life.
Well, if you was any good at mechanicking, none of this would have happened. I knew you didn't fix the car right. I knew you over-torqued them retaining bolts.
Bunny, you wouldn't know a retaining bolt if it walked up and kissed you in the face. We never should have got involved with this mess in the first place.
You know, we needed the money.
You mean you needed the money for your fancy clothes and furs.
Well, I'm trying to break into show business. I need the clothes to look the part. Not to mention, I need to get my guitar out of hock. Well, and then you go and drop a bundle on that worthless nag Dandy Dan last week at Arlington.
Should have married the horse. Put you out to pasture.
Are you coming or not? He's waiting for you.
What's he look like?
Well, let's see. He walks on 2 legs and he talks out of his mouth. What does it matter what he looks like?
I mean, does he look like a cop or does he look like a crook?
See for yourself.
The fuzz. Bunny, you stall him while I hide.
Oh no, Claude, you got yourself into this mess, and you can get yourself out of it. A couple of days ago, I was at the A&P buying groceries. Let me tell you what I heard. When Dillinger robbed that bank, the South Bend cops, they knew they was outgunned and outrun. So they asked the Studebaker Company to build him a special car to help him fight the bad guys. Now, the Studebaker Company is working on that special car. See, the Dillinger car.
Say, I heard that too. It's a 1934 President with a souped-up straight-8 engine, a gun porthole in the windshield. It's even got armored baffles to protect the radiator and tires. Can't you just see me behind the wheel of that beauty? Pop, pop, pop! Take that, John Dillinger. Then maybe I could get out of this crummy garage and be somebody. Vroom, vroom!
Claude, are you coming or not? I ought to be in pictures.
Maybe get away from her, too.
Stick 'em up. One false move and you're a goner.
Oh, don't shoot! I'll give you all the money I've got.
And make it quick.
I'm going as fast as I can, Mr. Dillinger.
How's that?
Well, it's coming along. At least I didn't bust out laughing this time. And by the way, when you point your gun, don't bring it down to level. Bring it up to level like this and squeeze the trigger.
I'm doing the best I can. I'm a gardener, not an actor.
Not a bank robber either. By the way, Ness wants us to come up. He popped his head in a few minutes ago. Wants to see us right away.
What is it we're supposed to be doing?
I told you. The BOI wants us to reenact the Merchants National Bank robbery. Then they're going to parade us in front of a bunch of witnesses, see if they can pick out something they didn't see before.
I knew I should have left that bag in the bushes where I found it. It's been nothing but trouble ever since I turned it in.
When was that?
About a week ago. Ness thinks it might be the money bag that was used in the bank robbery. He thinks I had something to do with it.
And do you?
Of course not. You?
Hey, Danny boy, I'm just a waitress over at the Main Street Cafe. As soon as I get a few bucks in my pocket, I'm blowing this town. Let's wrap this thing up.
All right, sweetheart. Put the dough in the bag.
Here's all the money. And I promise I won't press the silent alarm button.
Good. Hey, wait a second. How did you know the bank had a silent alarm system?
Ness told me. He said the bank robbers seem to know a lot about the Merchant National Bank.
Is that a fact, doll? Is that a fact?
Good day. I am Joseph Oliver Jr., and I'd like to welcome you to our home. Cupshaw home, as we call it. My father, J.D. Oliver, passed away last year. And you met my mother earlier, I believe. In fact, she asked me to say a few words about our family business. My grandfather, James Oliver, came here from Scotland and opened an iron foundry in Mishawaka where they fashioned horseshoes and other farm implements. As settlers moved into the Great Plains, they soon discovered a need for a better, more durable plow blade. Prior to the 1850s, farmers used a wooden plow that were not sturdy and often broke against the hard ground. In addition, damp soil would stick to them, making the process difficult and less efficient. My grandfather took up the challenge. By 1857, he had obtained a patent for his first chilled plow, which enabled him to produce an iron plow that was sharp enough to cut through the hard prairie grass and affordable enough to be purchased by the average American farmer. The chilled plow was an enormous success, and by 1878, the Oliver plant was producing over 16,000 plows a year. Soon they were in countries everywhere, and the company adopted the slogan, "Plowmaker to the world." I remember one time when I was a young boy, maybe 9 or 10, my grandpa took me on his knee and he told me that if a farmer walks every step behind a plow over a 5-square-mile field that he will have covered a distance equal to the circumference of the earth. Think of that, he told me, every time you see a farmer walk behind their plow. And you know what? I do. But you are here because of the recent crime in our city. The whole town is abuzz about the robbery of the Merchant National Bank and the death of the gang's leader, John Dillinger. Bureau of Investigation sure earned their stripes with that one. And South Bend is now the home of John Dillinger's last bank robbery. The getaway car drove down West Washington Avenue, right here by Copshaw Home. I wasn't here at the time, but several people told me that it was a black Hudson driving at a very high rate of speed. And a few nights later, our gardener told me that he heard 2 people on our grounds. They found a cloth bag in our side bushes. It's as if they were hiding something here. I reported this to the police, but as of yet, they haven't found anything. Maybe you will have better luck.
Well, they told me to come out to this Copshaw Home place, and here I am. I've been staying at the Oliver Hotel. Not a bad place for a podunk town. But I've got to get back to Chicago before long. That Elliot Ness surely is in no hurry to talk to me. And why does he want to talk to me anyway? I came here for my nephew Ryan's wedding. He's my sister's oldest boy. Don't know how he ever got mixed up with that Wallace woman, but there you are. So I came here all by myself on the South Shore. His Majesty, my husband, couldn't be bothered to come out to a wedding on my side of the family. Well, I was doing some shopping in downtown South Bend. If you can call 2 department stores, a drugstore, a barber shop, and a bank a downtown. Anyway, I happened to be down there on the afternoon in question. That's what the police call the day of the robbery. I don't know why they can't just call it June 30th like everybody else. I guess they think it makes it sound more official to call it the afternoon in question. Anyway, where was I? Well, I was doing some shopping in that Robertson place. I had to buy something for Willie and Edith's anniversary. Lord knows how fussy that Edith Jasperson is. I spent 2 whole hours going up and down all the way through that store until I wore myself out. Then I decided to walk down to the drugstore at the south end of the block. And all of a sudden, I heard this commotion and a gunshot. And I looked over and saw these men running out of the bank carrying a couple bags. Well, they jumped into this big black car and away they sped. They took off like a bat straight out of hell, if you know what I mean. Well, later on, I read in the paper that the robbers were the Johnny Dillinger gang, and they stole thousands of dollars, and they shot a police officer to death. Well, I just stood there and watched. And then I saw this police car come down the street, and he parked in front of the bank. The officer jumped out, and he started asking everyone questions. Well, I hope you don't think I had anything to do with it, I said to the officer. But he wanted to know what I saw and where I was standing at the time. So I told him what I had seen and what I heard, and he was taking notes, and he kept looking up at that big clock outside the bank building. Well, finally he told me I could leave, but that I had to be available in case the Bureau of Investigations wanted to talk to me. Well, I guess that means I've got to stay around here one more night. Oh, not that spending one more night away from Carl. That's my husband, Carl Newberry, the lawyer. Not that Carl that lives out in Cicero, but Carl Newberry, my husband, the famous trial lawyer. Anyway, having to spend one more night away from him isn't the worst thing that could happen to me. So, here I am, and I don't mind telling you I'm getting a little tired of waiting. What did I see, they'll ask me. Well, what did I see? It was Saturday, shortly after noon. The streets were fairly crowded.
Well, not like State Street in Chicago, but busy. People were coming and going out of that soda shop, and men were waiting in line for haircuts. Women were window shopping at Penny's and Robertson's. There was an elderly man wearing an old hat looking kind of confused. Oh, and there were children underfoot everywhere. Children should not be allowed downtown without a parent or guardian. That's what I always say. Well, they certainly scattered once those gunshots rang out. Not me. I just stood there, calm and collected. Takes a lot more than a bank robber to frighten Margaret Newberg, I can tell you that. Well, I'll be glad when all of this hullabaloo is over with so I can get some shopping done.
Are you ready for the answer? It was Charles Gadfly Tiddle Dew. For years, Charles Gadfly Tiddle Dew had been on the vaudeville circuit, eking out a living as a comic, singer, and soft shoe dancer. As vaudeville dried up in the early 30s, he needed some quick cash. Then the Dillinger gang offered Tiddle Dew the chance to be the frontman for the gang, casing out banks in the days before a robbery and giving the gang valuable information about the bank's vaults, security system, and daily routine. With his cover as a vaudeville performer, no one ever thought about his travel or itinerary. Tiddle Dew was questioned by the DOI, but released. He then made his way to Hollywood and made several unsuccessful showbiz ventures, such as The Four Stooges, Abbott Costello and Tiddle Dew, and I Love Tiddle Dew. He eventually gave up and became a talk show host. The two persons overheard by Daisy May on the Oliver's grounds that evening were Charles Gadfly Tiddle Dew and Bunny, the mechanic's wife, though she was an innocent bystander. Tiddle Dew had purchased her guitar from the pawnbroker, but left it in his hotel room, possibly as a lure. The bag found by the gardener was handed to Tiddle Dew after the robbery, but the gang kept the bank money. All Tiddle Dew received was a small payment for his part in the caper. Bunny had chased after the Dillinger getaway car because she knew there was a problem with the retaining bolts, but they ignored her. Our Elliot Ness moved to Hollywood in his later years, changed his name, and became a star in various movies and TV shows. Nora Milburn continued as a teller for many years at Merchants National. The robbery, however, made her tense and wary, giving her the nickname of the Hun. That's right, a teller the Hun. Daisy May continued to live a quiet life in South Bend. Her home became a haven for a wide variety of cats, dogs, birds, and rabbits. She left her small estate to the animal rescue shelter of Michiana. Bunny and Claude reconciled soon after the robbery. Bonnie indeed had chased after the Dillinger getaway car because she knew there was a problem with the retaining bolts, but they ignored her. She gave up on her singing career, and Claude soon realized he had no talent as an auto mechanic. With no skills or education, they went into politics. Danielle Brown, it turned out, was an undercover agent, and that's how she knew so much about Elliot Ness. She was so adept at it, however, that a problem arose at her retirement because no one had ever seen her or heard of her. Danny Boy Mullins remained in South Bend, working as a gardener, and then in 1938 joined the Civilian Conservation Corps, wanting to help design the giant Studebaker sign from pine trees at the Studebaker Proving Grounds. Unfortunately, Danny Boy's lack of education proved to be a drawback when he spelled the sign Stuhlbaker. Margaret Newberry returned to Chicago. She had money, but no organizational or management skills, so she became associated with several professional sports clubs in Chicago. And me? I hope there comes a time when the Oliver family decides to donate their majestic home to the History Museum. And then I can become a docent and lead tours for school children, tourists, and other interested adults. And that, as they say, is a wrap.